Alright, just want to make a quick video here to explain how to put together your Rana Tadpole controller. So as you can see here, we have all the parts laid out. So the first step is, depending on how you order your PCB, it may come with these edge rails on them. So first step there, you can just break those off. And then after that, the next thing we're going to do is take our ribbon cable here, feed it from underneath the board through this slot and into the ribbon cable connector. It might be easier to do it the other way. Put it into the ribbon cable connector first, lower that little flap to lock it in, and then slide the other end underneath the board like so. Once that is done, you can grab your USB-C breakout board, which has a matching connector on it, and here we are just going to lock that in place as well there. So at this point, you can plug it in, you can flash the firmware, you can check to make sure that all the buttons are working, that there's no issues in fabrication with any of the components, but we're going to skip that for this video and just jump right ahead. So let's put that aside for now, and we will grab our case. So in this case, this is one of the CNC machined Delrin cases. It's part of the pre-order batch that I did. You can also get this out of other materials or 3D print it or a number of other options. But with that here, the next step is to put the button caps in place. So ordering these in SLS 3D printed nylon from JLC, they'll come on this runner like this. And so for 20 buttons, we'll need 3 runners of 8, and we'll have a couple left over. So we can just pop those off like so. Should come off pretty easily. And then we will set them in our case. So this part is a little bit tedious, but it's important to be careful about it and see how I'm aligning all of these with the slot to be vertical. And that is what will match up with the switches here, and that's what keeps them stable, is the button cap kind of hugs the edge of the switch. So we'll continue doing this until we have all 20 of the buttons in place. They don't need to be perfectly aligned, there's a little bit of wiggle room, but if they're not facing generally vertically, you won't be able to get the circuit board in. So we're almost done here, just a few more to go. All the rest of the information, as far as the parts list, the CAD files for the custom parts and all that, is on the GitHub repository. So we're just going to correct a few of these that are a little crooked. Get rid of our extras there. And we are good to go. So for this part, we just want to put our board in like so, carefully. Sometimes you give it a little bit of a shake. It looks like that went pretty easily. And so now our main board is in place, and then the USB breakout board here just tucks into place like so. Okay, now for assembly. So we'll start with the 2 screws that go into the breakout board. These are M3 by 6mm long, just button head screws from McMaster. You can get them from a number of other places as well. screw that in. Okay, now we'll put this aside for just a second, and we will grab our backplate. So the backplate here is also a circuit board. It just has a silk screened logo, and then it has a ground plane on this outer side, and all of these screw holes are connected to that ground plane and also connected to this exposed copper pad here. And that is to ground the case and ground the backplate. Ground the case in the case if you had an aluminum build such as this one. Not needed for a plastic build, but it lowers the risk of electrostatic shock damaging the device. So at this point, what we will do is take our little piece of grounding foam here, and this will just provide contact between the ground plane of the backplate and this exposed pad on the main board, which is connected to electrical ground for the motherboard and the daughter board there. So once we have that, then we can put the screws and the spacers into the backplate. So these screws, they're M3 by 8mm long. I'm using these ultra low profile ones. You can use regular button heads, doesn't really matter. So that'll go through, and then I will grab a spacer, and these will press fit see if it'll focus. Like so. Okay, so we will just repeat that process for the other 5 holes here. These spacers are just X-profile O-rings from McMaster. They're pretty cheap. Link to those is also in the GitHub repository. You can probably use a stack of washers or anything else that gives the same general spacer height, but these are pretty convenient because they kind of hug the screw and make the assembly pretty easy. So now we have that done, we'll bring the full board back together, and we'll turn it over and gently get it lined up. So it might be somewhat of a press fit to get the back plate into the case. You can kind of hear the edges clicking into place there. Once we get that, we can just tighten down these screws. Almost done. Alright, and there we have it. So now the whole thing is assembled. You can plug it in, flash firmware if you haven't already. All the buttons should be working nicely, and they are. But the last step is to put on the foam pads. So these are just laser cut EVA foam. You could use other materials if you wanted. This just works pretty nicely. So we'll just peel that adhesive backing off and then put it on in that silk screened outline. So there's the first one, and there is the second one. And there you go. The Rana Tadpole build completed.